Yes, Miss Islam. Now you have another witness for us, I think.
I do. Can I call Miss Wahhabi, please?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Miss Wahhabi.
Good afternoon.
You're going to take the oath, I think. Is that right?
I am, yes.
There should be a Quran there by you on the table. Could you
Yeah.
take it in your right hand and read the words on the screen, please?
I swear by Allah that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. All right, sit down, please, and make yourself comfortable. All right, we can take this quite slowly so you feel relaxed as far as you can.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, all right. Yes, Mrs. Islam.
Thank you. Thank you very much for attending today to give your evidence to the inquiry and assist us with our investigations. By way of introduction, please try and keep your voice up so the transcriber over there can hear what you're saying and so that we can capture it on the transcript. It also helps to say yes or no rather than nod.
Yeah.
If any of my questions are unclear, please
Yes.
let me know and I'll ask them in a different way. And if at any
Yes.
point you need to stop for a break or anything like that, please let us know and we
Yes.
will make those arrangements.
I will. Thank you.
You've made 3 statements to the inquiry. The first is dated the 18th of April 2018. If we could go to that statement, please. It's IWS 6074. And if we could go to page 21. Can you confirm that that's your signature?
Yes, that's my signature.
Thank you. And if we could turn to your second statement, please, dated the 22nd of October 2018. That's IWS 401146. And if we could turn to page 10 of that statement, can you confirm that that is your signature?
That is also my signature.
Thank you. And if we can turn to your third statement, which is dated the 26th of February 2020, which is IWS 401714. And if we could go to page 18 of that statement, please. Can you confirm that that is your signature?
Yes, it is.
And have you had the opportunity to read all of those statements recently?
I have.
And can you confirm that the contents are true to the best of your knowledge?
They are.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you some background questions first.
Yes.
You were a resident at flat 66 of Grenfell Tower at the time of the fire, and you had lived there since 2001. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you lived there with your former husband and your 2 children. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Your brother Abdul Aziz Al Wahhabi lived in flat 182 with his wife Fawzia Al Wahhabi and their 3 children, Yasin, Nurhuda, and Mehdi. Is that right?
That's right.
And they tragically perished in the fire.
Yes, they did.
I'm now going to ask you some questions about the night of the fire on the 14th of June. You gave evidence in phase 1 of the inquiry where you told us about your escape from the fire. We know from the CCTV image you were shown that you left the tower at 1:21. Is that right?
That's correct.
And after leaving the building, is it correct that you and your family remained at the scene until it got light outside?
That's also correct.
And during this time, you outline in your statement that you made a number of calls to your brother. Is that right?
That's correct.
Do you remember roughly how many hours you were outside of the tower for?
Many hours. Many, many hours. I'm not sure exactly what time. Yeah, we were there all day, literally all day.
Okay. And how would you describe the atmosphere during those early hours on the scene?
Chaotic, very chaotic. We were in shock. A lot of us were in shock. Felt surreal and felt like I was watching a movie and that wasn't actually happening.
And during your time outside of the tower, was there anyone from RBKC, the TMO, or other official presence providing information about where to go or what to do?
No. The only presence that was there was the police. And I remember them ushering us further back. And then there was at one point where I wrote, one of the policemen had a notepad, and I remember giving our names to the policeman.
Thank you. And there's a reference in your statement where you mention seeing somebody from the TMO.
Yes.
I'm going to take you to paragraph 26 of your second statement, please. It should come up on your screen in just a moment.
Okay.
And you say, during the night of the fire and the next day, on 14th of June 2017, I didn't notice anyone from RBKC or KCTMO taking charge of the situation. The community organised itself. I did see someone who said that he was there to represent the KCTMO. He was wearing a lanyard with a name badge, but I don't remember his name. I saw him at the end of Walmer Road towards the Rugby Portobello Club. I told him the names of my family and he wrote down their names and my mobile number on his notebook. I asked him to get back to me, but he never... If we could just turn over, please. But he never did. I didn't see anyone from RBKC or TMO until much later that day. Do you remember roughly when you saw this person from the TMO?
I would probably say it was still dark. It was still dark, but it was approaching light, but it wasn't quite light just yet. Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly what time though,
Okay.
to be honest.
And did the person you spoke to tell you what he was going to do with the information about your family that you'd provided?
No.
And
No, I didn't. I kind of volunteered that information about my family, and he wrote it down. And I asked him to get back to me. He said he would, but which he didn't. But it was more of me telling him as opposed to him asking me.
Thank you. And did he give you any information about what to do, where to go, any rest centres or anything like that?
Nothing.
I'm now going to ask you some questions about the rugby club. And is it right that at some point in the morning of the 14th, you went to the rugby club?
I did, yeah.
And are you able to say roughly what sort of time that was?
It was still quite dark. My nephew, Anas Gamhi, is the one who actually organised the rugby club to be opened. He had booked the place before for his own, his wedding. He had a reception in the rugby club, and he had contacts. I believe the gentleman was called Chris. He knocked on his door and asked him and said, "There's people outside. Can we open the rugby club to let people in, so they're not out on the streets?" I know Anas because Anas was the first family member from my family that was on the scene to come and support us. It was still dark when he went to have it open. But I didn't go into the rugby club immediately because I needed to see where my family were, my brother and his wife and his children, and I just couldn't leave knowing that they hadn't got out yet. So although the rugby club was opened and people began to use the space and be in the rugby club, I just couldn't go in for a while. I didn't go in until much later. It was daylight had been. That's when I went in. Yeah.
Okay. And do you remember whether the conversation with the person that you just mentioned with the TMO member was before or after you went to the rugby club?
Before I went to the rugby club.
And at the rugby club, were you aware of a list of safe and missing residents that had been started by members of the community?
So when I went into the rugby club, I can't remember if her name's Jan, the lady who works at the rugby club. I just said, we've just come out of the tower. There was no, immediate list right straight away. And then she said, maybe let's write she kind of suggested, let's write a list of those of you who've come out and said, would you like to write your name? So I did write my name. Then I took upon myself to say to her, my family haven't come out. Can we write a list of people that were missing? And so we then created two lists. There was one list of people that had come out, and then another new list that we created with my family's name first on there to say who we were still looking for. And then as time went on, somehow there was confusion, and those lists must have merged together because we then were given information that our family were on the safe list. They called it the safe list. So there was a bit of a mistake about that. I think the list must have somehow been put together. I don't know if anybody else added who people they were waiting for. I know that I did. I didn't see any other names after my family, but there was a list of people who came out. Later on, William Thompson, Edwin Defan, and Marhad, I don't know his surname, I know they created a big massive list within the rugby club, the big sheets of paper, so we could just write who we were still looking, who was out and who we were looking for. So that was done by the community.
Yeah.
by survivors themselves.
Yes. Now, you've told us that at some point the lists became confused and your family members were listed on the safe list.
Yes.
How did that make you feel when you saw that?
I remember being in the hotel when that happened, and we were given, again, it was just word of mouth from the community saying that there's a safe list and your family's name are on the list. That safe list was not just a rugby club, because I think they must have been merging, having discussion between the different community spaces, and I think Clement James as well, and the lists were, you could find it where, there were all these lists, but they were merging them together. And we were given information, and I still have text messages where I messaged, colleagues and, friends saying, listen, my family are fine. They're on the safe list. I don't know where they are, but they're fine. But I just kept waiting for news, thinking they were out. And I was given, I know obviously people were in shock, and I was given information by people, somebody who said that they'd seen Mehdi wearing a gas mask. That was somebody somebody said they'd literally seen him himself. I'd heard from somebody else that my brother came out of the tower and they saw him disorientated. We got other information saying that Yasin was in hospital, which is why my family were running around the hospitals. So these were information that we were given from people saying that they spotted them alive. It gave us hope. And the fact that those lists were together also, it gave me hope. And then obviously it turned out that they weren't on a safe list and they didn't survive.
Now, you've told us about the various miscommunication that was shared about your members of your family. In your view, what do you think led to inaccurate information being shared?
The lack of presence from any government, be it local or local government, central government. There was no one there to kind of organise anything. It was very chaotic. So it was for people from the community, a lot of them being survivors and bereaved themselves, just trying to create these lists, and people, local residents, and they tried their best to do what they could do. The fact they were merged, it's just a human error. It was a human error, but the fact that there was no one there from any authority to support us was the problem.
And just taking that one step further, what do you think would have prevented inaccurate information being shared?
I think, one, obviously having somebody there, having somebody from local authority to create those lists. They'd have a list, so the council knows who lives in those towers. They knew who lived in those towers. They knew that I lived in that tower with my ex-husband and my children, and my brother lived. They knew, so they could have had a tick list and kind of ticked off, are you out, and seen. But there was none of that. So it was left to the community to create those lists themselves, in the best way they knew how.
And you've just mentioned that a number of your family members attended hospitals. Do you know whether they were able to get any information?
They attended various hospitals. I can't remember the names of all of them. I've listed them in my statement. But they attended hospitals because that information came from the local community saying that people had been taken to particular hospitals. So I think St Thomas's was one of them, St Mary's. I can't remember all of them. They are in my statement. So that was all through word of mouth of where the ambulances were coming, where they were taking people. So that's where they went. And they did go there and they asked and they questioned, but they were told that they weren't there. They weren't there. Especially, I think, like I said, we were told that Yasin was in a particular hospital. Somebody said they'd seen him in a bed. But like I said, people were, you see things that you think you saw because it's trauma.
Yes.
Yeah.
And is it right that you also tried calling the Casualty Bureau telephone number?
Yes, my family did. I didn't personally call them myself. I was in shock of being a survivor myself and coming out of the tower. All the information was being relayed to me, and I was asking all the questions and saying, go and ask or find this, go there. And all the information was coming. It was my nieces that were going around to hospitals, and they called the Casualty Bureau. The number was put up. I'm not sure by who, whether it was community. I'm not sure, but it was just a matter of calling, giving the information, but you weren't getting anything back.
Do you remember when you received any official information about your brother and his family?
Weeks, months. I do remember. I do remember the not immediately. Maybe I don't know how many days later. The FLOs. We had two initial FLOs. Jennifer Anderson and Andrew Brown were the two initial FLOs that we got, and they somehow found my mum's address. I know my brother previously lived at my mum's address, so maybe that's how they knew where my mum's address was. But obviously there were lots of people from the community coming to kind of see the survivors and see, bereaved families, and didn't know they were bereaved at that point. It was quite a busy place. So then they were asked to just meet at my sister's house, Amina Sharamlahi. That's where all the meetings took place, which is also on Lancaster West Estate. It's not immediately in front of the tower, but you can see the tower from where my sister lived at the time. So lots of those meetings took place there. And I remember getting information from my sister saying the detectives are here, there to give you information. But there wasn't any information they could give us. They were just basically coming to ask questions about them, asking where they took DNA from myself, my brother Amin al-Wahabi, and they asked us about their dentist, which dentist they went to.
And what were your experiences of the FLOs that were assigned to you? Were they responsive to yours and your family's needs?
The FLOs that we had were very responsive to us and our needs. They tried their best. They didn't have all the information. They didn't know. They could only tell us what they did know. And obviously there were things that they couldn't tell us until that things were confirmed. But every time there was any glimpse of information, they made sure they came and met with us face to face. Yeah.
And how would you describe the overall process of trying to find information about your family in the immediate aftermath?
It's the worst experience ever. It's the unknown. It's the unknown. We didn't have any information. No one could tell us any information for a very long time. I can't put it into words. It was very, very difficult. We didn't have any information. Like I said, the FLOs came, but they didn't. It was just, I think you took comfort in having somebody that was from, an authority that was there to you kind of take comfort in authority being there. You think that they're here, they can give you information, or they're just there, so when there is something, they'll come to you. But I think we took comfort in having the FLOs, but it didn't mean that we had any information, because they didn't have any information to give.
I now want to return to the 14th of June and ask you some questions about your time at the rugby club. Is it right that there were RBKC staff members present at the rugby club on the 14th of June?
Not initially. They weren't present at all. It wasn't until much, much later in the day that I was downstairs. My daughter came out. She wasn't wearing any shoes. So people from the community were bringing things to wear because we came out in our pajamas. And I remember being downstairs just trying to find a pair of shoes that would fit her. Somebody said there's basically RBKC are upstairs about hotel rooms, basically accommodation. But it wasn't like I didn't get a phone call. I had my mobile number with my mobile phone with me, which RBKC are they have my number. So they could have called me and said, we're here. I never got information from them. It was just through word of mouth. People saying, do you know what, there are RBKC here, they're sending people to accommodation. And that's the first I heard of it. So I remember my sister taking me upstairs saying, because I just was in shock, she would just guide me and said, Anna, let's go and see what's going on. So we did go, but it was there was no privacy. There was literally another table, and I'd have a conversation with the RBKC representative, and then there's another surviving family right next to me talking about their own, about themselves. So there was no privacy, and they weren't polite in any way. I remember them saying they were going to put me in a hotel very far out, not within RBKC, it was quite far. And I remember saying to them, this is my area, I need to be here, I don't know where my brother is. And they said I had to take whatever I was given. Yes. And I remember pleading, saying I need to be close. And it just happened to something, actually we've got one here. But there was no eye contact, there was no empathy, there was nothing. It was very cold, the conversation with the RBKC representative. And my sister sat with me throughout the whole conversation. And like I said, you could hear what was going on with everybody else. So I was given the hotel Premier Inn on West Cromwell Road. I know there's another one in Earls Court, but I was given on the one on West Cromwell Road. There were, I think, 3 other families there that were also in that hotel with me.
Okay. Just want to take you to a passage in your third statement, please, which deals with this in a little bit more detail, if that's okay. It's paragraph 54. And you just covered some of it, but just to revisit it, you say, at this point, it's at the should be at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah.
At this point, I was in shock and someone had to guide me up to meet with them. I recall there were maybe 3 or 4 people from RBKC sat at desks. I told RBKC that I needed to stay within the area. I was informed that they would give us whatever came up. The person went through a tick box interview. We were not asked about whether we had access to money, food or water or given a way to access them. The person conducting the interview was robotic and did not have any empathy. The room was very small and there was no privacy. You could hear what was being discussed with the other people in the room. Now, you've dealt with some of these points already, but I just want to ask you some follow-up questions, if that's okay. Did there appear to be a clear system in place for the allocation of emergency accommodation during this interview?
No clear system. No, we were just like cattle coming through, and they were like, it was, like I said, it was a tick box exercise, and and when you discuss with other survivors and stuff, it was just the conversations were very different. So it was just, I don't think there was any consistency with the questions, or apart from the fact of, how many are you in the household or whatever have you, which didn't really make a difference because they put us all in one room anyway.
Now, you've mentioned that there was somebody sitting next to you during your interview, but do you remember if there were other people within the room at the same time?
There was a desk. That was an Rugby Portobello Trust representative that was there, that was making sure everybody was coming in. There was a desk that I was sat at. There was another desk. I think there were about 3 or 4 desks, and each desk had an RBK representative behind the table, and there was a family in front. So all of this was happening in one room, and it wasn't a big room at that.
Yes. Do you feel that you were treated with dignity and respect in that interview?
Absolutely not.
And in your view, what should have been done differently by RBKC staff in those interviews with families?
Well, you had there was bigger spaces downstairs in the Rugby Portobello. You could use the bigger spaces, or you could have had a bit more. There was another room next door. You could have a bit more privacy, and I think a bit more humanity and empathy with the way you speak to people. We've just come out of a burning building. We're looking for our family. We've got children with no shoes on. We're wearing our pajamas. We're in shock. Have a bit of empathy for people. There was none of that. I think the way they conducted themselves was absolutely disgusting.
I'm now going to turn to ask you about the emergency accommodation that you were provided, and you've told us that you and your family were allocated 1 room at the Premier Inn in Kensington. And is it right that that was 1 room for the 4 of you, and it contained a double bed, a single bed, and a sofa bed?
That's correct. A small sofa bed. It was very tight. There's 4 of us in 1 room. Yeah.
Were these sleeping arrangements suitable for you and your family?
Absolutely not. We were all, there's 4 of us, PTSD, children who are looking for their cousins and their uncle and aunt. I just remember collapsing, and you've got nowhere to collapse. You just collapse right in front of your children. And I remember people, my family and friends, coming to try and support you, and you've got a bed and you've got this little area right next to the bed, and I just remember I kept collapsing, and there's no space.
And how long were you in that accommodation for?
18 months.
And were you in that same room for that 18 months?
Same room for 18 months.
In terms of the provision of food, is it right that food was provided at set times at breakfast and dinner time?
Initially, I didn't know there was any food provision. I didn't know. I wasn't aware of that at all. No one told us there was food provision at all. So my friends would bring me food. We had local community bringing us food. The Sikh community were very supportive. Muslim community, they were all bringing us food to the hotels. That's how we were able to eat. Or I'd go to my mum's, and people from the community were bringing food there as well. I didn't know anything about there being food. It was my sister, Asiya, who passed away a few months ago, who went to the hotel manager and said, "Is there anything for my sister to eat?" Because we were fasting. And there were particular times of the day that we need to break our fast, particular times of the day that we need to eat before we start our fast. there was no accommodation for that at all. What they did say was that we could have breakfast, but to have breakfast, you had to leave your room. You couldn't take anything to your room. You had to go in and mix with just people who were staying there having a holiday. People aren't having a holiday. We had to go in the same room, breakfast area, food space, and that's where we could get some breakfast. And we'd have to eat it there in front of everybody, regardless of what we've been through. And that's not the hotel's fault. That's their system. That's RBK's fault. They should have thought about that, and they didn't. There was no lunch. There was no lunch provided at the hotel. There was a dinner service, but it was very a particular time, and it was basically frozen food that they heat up in the microwave, and that was it really. There was nothing healthy. So eventually, within time, as time went on, then we were given financial support to be able to purchase our own food. So we would just get takeout. This is Earl's Court. I mean, there's nothing healthy you can get there, to be quite honest. So I put on a lot of weight after the tragedy, and I still suffer from gastro problems now because of the unhealthy food I consumed within those 18 months. That I might need to have an operation now because I've got quite a few gallstones as a result of unhealthy eating.
And you've told us about the timings of the food. Is it also right that the food was not halal?
The food was not halal. It was not halal, and even the vegetarian option, there wasn't much. And my children are quite fussy. They're used to a home cooked meal. But yeah, we couldn't. There was nothing. It was all frozen. The only thing I could get them was fish fingers. So they literally had that every single day. Yeah. So they had the same food every single day. Yeah.
And overall, what impact did the hotel accommodation have on you and your family?
It broke my family. My son, who still today struggles with insomnia, was literally walking. He was 16. 16. Again in shock. He was literally just walking the street. He just walked the streets. I mean, what's he going to do? Come and sleep in the same bedroom? His mum and dad's in the same bedroom, and his sister's there, and so he was just walking the streets. There was a 24-hour Tesco's. He literally used to walk to that Tesco, walk around it, and he just literally walk the streets. That's all he did. My daughter was in shock, so she would literally be stuck to me. She wouldn't let go of me. We had to hold hands. It's only been the last 2 years that she's been able to sleep in a separate bedroom. She had to sleep in my bed, and I still have to have night lights on and everything for her. But yeah, so we'd have to hold hands, and I remember just her shaking. She just continuously shake like a leaf. But yeah, it was too much for my ex-husband at the time, so he couldn't stay. He left. He went away to Morocco to spend time with his family because he just couldn't be there. He couldn't be there for us.
I'm going to turn now to ask you some questions about financial assistance. In paragraph 66 of your second statement, and we can go to it if we need to.
Yes, please.
So paragraph 66, you say, I recall we were given payments by RBKC. I cannot recall how much. Do you remember whether that assistance was provided in the first week following the fire?
I can't remember. There was one lady that came. I can't remember if it was the first week or just after the first week. I remember her coming, and she gave us, I think, about 100 and something pounds in an envelope. And then that was it. She gave us that in an envelope. And she brought a lady with her. I put in my statement, I think it was Sarah Cheatham or something like that. I put her name in there, and she said that this is a linked person, and she gave me her number, and yeah, and that was it really. But then that number just wouldn't work anymore, so I didn't even have that contact. I never heard from the lady again, and that was it.
Yeah. We'll come on to that in just a second. And is it also right that you received cash payments from donations from charities?
Yes.
Do you remember if that was in the first week?
Yes, in the first week, yes, there was, because we didn't, we'd left our ID. I couldn't access any of my funds. I'm always worked. I would have had money in my bank to pay for what I needed to pay, to purchase for me and my children, but I couldn't access those funds. So I remember Human Aid coming to to the hotel. But then again, that was, I mean, I'm not saying that would have happened to everybody. It's somebody that I know, her mum works for them. And so it was like, oh, we know somebody's happened, so they came to the hotel. So that's why they came. So I'm not sure if that happened to everybody, but we did have somebody, and I remember them giving us maybe again, some money and an envelope. And I remember them giving me a prayer mat and a Quran.
Thank you. Turning briefly to ask you about communication and how information and support was communicated to you. Did you receive any information from RBKC or the TMO about the support available to you, such as through leaflets or phone calls within the first week following the fire?
Nothing from them. It wasn't until much later that it wasn't so much later, it was in the summer break. I was going to visit my sister Asiya, and there was a lady who lived downstairs. And I think they knew that we'd been impacted, and her daughter said, kind of had a discussion about who we were and whatever have you, and I said, I'm just coming to see my sister. And she said that her sister was in Henry Dickens Estate supporting children with art therapy, and that we could use that service for my daughter, because she was struggling. So I remember going to Henry Dickens Estate. There was a community hall there, and I remember meeting somebody there called Malcolm from Hestia. I remember meeting him there, and they were talking about certain support and leaflets. And I said, I don't get any of them. We didn't get any leaflets at the Premier Inn. I know that there was another Premier Inn, but I don't know if they did. But the Premier Inn that we were on, West Cromwell Road, we didn't get any leaflets. Nothing. I don't know if that's because there was only like a handful of there were like four families. There were 4 families in the hotel that I was in, and then 2 of them left to somewhere else. There remained 2 families in that hotel. Maybe that's why there wasn't a large number of us in that hotel. There was no information. But I remember Malcolm then making contact, because he said he would, and he ensured that we then started getting newsletters to that hotel as well.
And do you remember roughly when that was?
It would have been, so I would have met Malcolm in the summer months, August, probably September, end of August, September maybe.
Turning now to ask you about key worker and social worker support. If I can take you, please, to paragraph 67 of your first witness statement. So here you say, I was not assigned a key worker or anyone I could call from RBKC initially. No one from the council came to see if we were okay in the days following the fire. They just left us. A lady from RBKC eventually came, I don't know how many days after the fire. She brought another lady with her named Sarah Cheetham. I wrote down Sarah's full name and contact number. They told me Sarah was my link person. I contacted her, but she stopped responding, and I was told she'd been transferred somewhere else. It was all very confused. Is that what you were referring to briefly earlier on?
That's what I was referring to, yes.
And is it correct that several weeks later you were allocated someone you had met at the rugby club who was a social worker?
Yeah, so somebody, again, through word of mouth, was saying that had told, somehow the information got back to one of my sisters, saying that at the Rugby Portobello there were people there supporting with ID, passports, because obviously we'd lost our passports, we didn't have any identification. And apparently at Rugby Portobello there were people there supporting. So we went there. That's why I went back to the Rugby Portobello, and I met Ashley Drake there. She was supporting, and I had my children with me. So we were there, and then I met Ashley. She was a social worker, but she wasn't my key worker at that point. But then I didn't have any kind of key worker or link worker, whatever they wanted to call them. I didn't have anything at all. Then there was a meeting at Holborn Bars that the FLOs used to have some meetings there. They took us there, and there were, the Red Cross being there to support us. And we were there, and because I said to the FLOs, it was the FLOs basically that got us, made sure that we had a key worker, because nobody else came and asked us. And I'd relayed that information to them, and I'd heard other people had key workers, but we didn't have anybody. And then when we went there were people from RBKC there, and it turned out that they said I had been allocated the key worker. There were 4 allocated to me, 4. I didn't know about either one of them, and they didn't know about each other. They were from different boroughs They weren't RBKC. And then Ashley Drake happened to be there that day as well, supporting. And she then said, you know what, do you want me to be your key worker? And I said, yeah, because I'd met her already, so it made sense. And she'd met my children. So at that point, there was a representative from RBKC who said, okay, we'll tell the other 4, not Ashley Drake, they're no longer to be your key worker, although I didn't know they were mine anyway. They hadn't contacted me. So I then remained with Ashley Drake, it was good to have somebody we'd met. She was very supportive. She helped with, obviously my children were struggling, and she'd help with like school meetings, especially for Zach, because he had to move, because he was in the middle of doing his AS levels when the tragedy happened. So she helped with meetings of transition, which was a big problem anyway. But we had Ashley, but Ashley wasn't part of the key worker hub. So we had support, but it wasn't adequate support. She was good with what she did as a social worker because she's a professional. She knew her job, but she couldn't tap into services through RBKC, the key worker hub, because she wasn't one of them. It was very, very confusing. So there are lots of support services that were offered to families that wasn't offered to my family because Ashley Drake wasn't part of the key worker hub.
Thank you. And overall, how would you describe your experience of the key worker system and the support provided to you by the social worker?
Like I said, Ashley Drake did her best. She was very supportive in the best way she could, and like the essentials. I mean, she helped with making sure we had funds to buy food. That's what she was allowed to do. But anything else, we didn't get any of that. No support. I obviously being bereaved and wanting to know where my family was, I was sleeping at the hotel, but I was spending the whole day at my mum's, trying to get to my mum's. Obviously, she lives in W11, and I was up in near Earls Court. So I know that I've heard that there was support service with regards to taxi services that could take you to where you needed to go. I remember being given a TFL like kind of Oyster card for us, me and us as a family individually that we could use. That was there for 1 month, and they wouldn't give it to us anymore. They just said you've got to make your own way. And then I'd heard that there was some people who had their own cars. I did have my own car. They could help with £50 a week towards your petrol. So I said, okay. So I then said, instead of paying, because you said I can't have a car, a TFL card, and you're saying that I can't have a taxi service that everybody else is getting, we weren't allowed it. Can you please just pay the £50 towards my petrol for the week, because I'm going back and forth quite a few times, and I was told they would. It never ever happened. Never happened. Wasn't supported at all with any transport between my mum's house and the hotel, or any appointments with meeting FLOs or anything. It was all on me.
Thank you. Going to turn now to psychological support. Were you aware of any counselling services or mental health support being available in the first week following the fire?
No.
Did you receive, and you've touched on this, but did you receive any information about this type of support being available whilst you were at your hotel?
No, not initially. I heard later on, again through word of mouth, not through RBKC or any support services. I heard much later on within the weeks. I heard that there were therapists or support workers going to hotels. But again, like I said, there were 2 of us by this point in the hotel. We didn't have anybody coming to our hotel to support us. So if you wanted to access that support that I only found out through word of mouth, I had to then go to another hotel to access that support. And I'd already heard from other survivors and bereaved that was happening just openly in the meeting, in the reception area of hotels. There was no privacy, and we were bereaved. I was still trying to find out. I didn't know where my family were at that point. Still, I think we had maybe one identification in the summer, and then we had to wait. It wasn't until October 2017 that the final identification was confirmed. So there wasn't. I'm not going to be travelling to a hotel, and then you don't even know if you're going to see someone. So again, through Malcolm. I had contact with Malcolm at this point, so Malcolm he was my contact person. I don't think Ashley Drake knew about any much because, again, she wasn't part of the key worker hub. And then Malcolm put me in touch with, so there was David Bailey, who supported my son Zach from CAMS, and who actually Ashley Drake did organise that. But then Malcolm supported with been in contact with a therapist who I still see today. Anjali Sudra, I still see her today, so that's the same therapist I see. But that was, again, not through any RBKC, that was through, a community organisation that gave me that information.
Yes.
But like I said, I didn't tap into it. I had an assessment, but it took a while before you could, start sessions. Because not because I couldn't have sessions at St Charles, it's because I wasn't in a good place to start them immediately myself.
Yes. If I could turn you please to paragraph 84 of your third witness statement. It's just at the bottom of the page, and you say, people need to understand that time is not a healer. Myself and my family are still suffering from the physical and mental effects of the Grenfell fire. Do you feel as though you have been sufficiently supported by way of mental health provision following the fire?
Like I said, I still see my therapist every single week since 2017 till today, it's 2022, and I feel that support is there. What I feel is absent isn't the fact I'm having therapy, it's the understanding between the physical and what mental health does to you physically. I feel that there still needs to be some learning. I've been reading a book called The Body Keeps Score, and your body keeps score. I know I gave evidence in phase 1 of the inquiry, and I was walking around, as you can see, I've had to have adaptations to my feet now, but I need to have adaptations, but my body was in so much pain. I know that the way I evacuated impacted my discs, which I didn't think about at the time. I was just literally fighting and flying because I just needed to know where my family were, and it was a whole long process. It wasn't until 18 months later when I went moved into the property that I was living in, and then in June 2019, a week after the second year anniversary, I ended up in hospital. I couldn't walk. I had to. I was bedbound. I couldn't go to the bathroom on my own. I couldn't do anything. And I had to have adaptations at home. So I just think what I'm trying to say is the fact that, yes, there is support, but for counselling and therapy. But I don't think there's an understanding of what it does to us, not just mentally, but physically. It's physically draining what we've been through, and it impacts us. Where we hold it, we have to hold it. Because if I didn't hold it, I wouldn't be able to have meetings with the FLOs. I wouldn't be able to come here today. I have to hold it. When you hold it, it hurts. It hurts physically, not just mentally.
Thank you. Just take a moment if you need to, Ms. Wahhabi.
Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to add to that it's not just my pain, it's my children's pain. My family's pain. My family were running around to support me as a survivor when they've also lost their brother and their sister-in-law and their daughter-in-law and their nephews and grandchildren. They were like, Hanans, she's the one who's the survivor. Yes, I am a survivor and it hurts, but they've also lost. They've also experienced pain. And then my children who were just in one room, and you can imagine the PTSD that I tried to hold, and you just feel like as a mother I failed because I couldn't support them. So there's some support, but it's not enough.
Thank you. Are you okay for me to continue?
Yeah.
Just want to touch briefly on your experience of the Westway Centre.
Yeah.
In your statement, you say that you visited the Westway Centre at some point to deal with administrative tasks, such as getting documents replaced.
Yes.
Do you remember when that visit was? Was it within the first week?
No, it wasn't in the first week, no.
Okay. And generally, how did you feel about the services that were available at the Westway Centre?
Again, it's something that I found out through word of mouth. It wasn't some kind of professional that would told us about it. It would have been. Actually, I think the FLOs did give us information about that, actually. But again, majority of the information was given through word of mouth from the community that would share the information with my family and who would share it with me. You had the Red Cross that would allow that you'd have to kind of to be allowed in. So you had to go through that process of queuing up and waiting, and then just saying who you were and saying that every day you went, you'd have to repeat the same process. And then when you went in, I'm thankful that it was there, because I was able to get my driver's license. I was able to, transfer my brother who passed away's logbook into my surviving brother's name. We were able to do things like that. So there was the services were there, but it was very exposed. There was no privacy in it, and everything was happening in one space. You had, DVLA in this section, you've got somebody from housing over here, you've got people giving out clothes and food over here, and it was a lot. It was quite overwhelming. You walk in and it's like, oh my God. Yeah.
And how did your experience of the Westway compare to your experience of the rugby club, for example?
The rugby club was, in my opinion, the rugby club was the best place for me. They did the best they could, and I felt that it was very community orientated, and you felt it. You felt that people wanted to help. You felt that they would try their best. They would tell you what's here. Whereas in the Westway, there were things available, but you had to ask what was there. No one kind of came and told you, or if you actually saw a sign, if they had might say RBKC housing, it was very office style. That's all I can think of. I know it was open, but it wasn't community friendly. Whereas Rugby Portobello was very community friendly.
And just dealing with the community response more broadly, how would you describe the support provided by charities and community organisations in the immediate aftermath?
First class.
And how did the response of the community compare to the official response in your view?
No comparison. They were the best, and the officials were non-existent.
Turning now, please, to ask you a few questions about your observations on the overarching response. In your second statement, and we don't need to go to it unless you need us to, but in paragraph 81, you say that Alok Sharma, Sajid Javid and Theresa May all attended to speak to us. What are you referring to when you say that? So
Alok Sharma came to the Westway. Again, that was through, I didn't know he was there. It was word of mouth that he was there. And you could talk, he was there about housing, to people needed housing. But I remember, again, like I said, it was word of mouth. It wasn't, and you had to get there at a particular time, otherwise you're not going to see him. And I remember it was a bit like animals, basically. We're literally just trying to fight to get to see him, to it's my housing kind of thing. And he just stood, he was just waiting there to speak to us. And you have to sit there and wait. And then if you get to see him, you're lucky. If you don't, come back tomorrow. So that's what it was like with Alok Sharma. And and then with Sajid Javid, that was all through the kind of Grenfell United that we got to meet Sajid Javid. And that was through, so Grenfell United was set up quite early on. And I was initially part of the Grenfell United group. And that's how I got to meet him. Otherwise, I wouldn't have got to meet him. And Theresa May, again, that was again set up through Grenfell United. It wasn't, these were set up by our people, survivors and bereaved. That's how we got to have these people come and meet us. Theresa May, when she came, she just spoke openly to all of us in, I think it was the hotel in High Street, Kensington. And Sajid Javid, again, was in one of the studios I met with him. I think the only thing with Sajid Javid, he had, there was somebody called Hannah Ram and his team that, because, and like I said, my son was struggling between, academically just trying to transfer, because he was at KAA, which is by the school, he couldn't stay there for obvious reasons. So it was trying to find him a new place to go and study. And Hannah Ram, so that's one thing I did get from them. They helped me to secure him a place at Phoenix Academy, which in all honesty wasn't great because they didn't support with Glasgow Grenfell anyway, so.
And generally speaking, what was your experience of speaking to these officials from central government? Were they responsive to your concerns overall?
They took the information, you never heard back from them. The only person I heard back from was Hannah Ram about Zach's place in Phoenix Academy, transferred from KAA. That's the only information I got. There was nothing else. You didn't get anything about housing, even though you went and shared information about housing. You didn't get any feedback. You'd go and give the information, but nothing would come back to you.
Thank you. And if we could turn to paragraph 72 of your third statement, please. You say, I feel that RBKC massively, massively failed us. As a survivor and bereaved, it was extremely hard. I was dealing with my own shock at what had happened to us, and then also with worries about my brother and his family. RBKC supported whoever shouted the loudest, but I am not a shouter and I didn't have the energy. I don't have the words to explain how it was. It was overwhelming. In what ways do you feel that RBKC failed you?
In every way possible. They were not there. There was no consistency in how they supported people. Like I mentioned already about transport. There wasn't any transport for me and my family, but there was for other people. They failed. They were not there. They didn't look for us. I mean, even the fact that, the FLOs found my mum's property. They knew where my mum lived. My brother had lived there. RBKC didn't ever go and visit my mum. She lost her son. She lost her daughter-in-law. She lost her grandchildren. They never went. So they didn't look for anybody. I mean, the only reason why they knew where we were is because they had to pay for our hotel accommodation. I mean, had they not had to pay or fork out any money, they wouldn't. They don't care. They don't care. And we experienced this way back before the tragedy, part of the Grenfell Compact. They don't care about us. So they failed us. They continue to fail us. We're still in our homes now and waiting for repairs to be done. Repairs that I mean, even today now, I've been trying to sort out and organise for repairs in my property to be sorted, to be fixed, and I just can't. There's no contact. You don't get any information back, and I keep saying I need at least a response because the unknown. I struggle with the unknown after what happened to me. There's nothing. I got a text today before I came to the inquiry saying, "I hope you're okay. Would you like to talk today? And by the way, good luck this afternoon." They know I'm coming here, and they text me today of all days. RBKC all over again.
Thank you. And if we could just go to paragraph 82 of this statement, please. You say, it was clear that RBKC and the government failed us in their response. I hope nothing like this ever happens again. However, there needs to be plans in place which ensure a coordinated response, which enables people have access to the support and services they need. Families should be treated with dignity. And you've just touched on this, but if there's anything else you'd like to add, what lessons do you feel need to be learned from the experience that you and your family had in the immediate aftermath?
I've actually written some words to answer this question because I mean, thank you for allowing me to take my time to respond to the questions today. That has helped. But part of my PTSD is I do kind of get tongue twisted sometimes. The simplest of vocabulary just go. So I wanted to prepare something that I feel comfortable reading, and I've got that with me today to answer this question.
Of course.
Thank you, first of all. Thank you very much. So the last time I was asked that question, I implored Sir Martin to ensure there was change. I want to thank you and the entire inquiry team for the work you are doing to expose the truth about the failings that led to 72 preventable deaths, including that of my dear brother Abdul Aziz, his wife Fawzia, and the beloved children Yasin, Nurhuda and Mehdi. There are some things I'd like to say that go beyond my statements, and to some extent also beyond the scope of the inquiry. These are not only addressed to you, but to everybody working in housing, the built environment, local and central government. Firstly to the community, volunteers, charities and religious groups who rushed to our aid from all over the country and the world, who were present and supported us in the best way they could. Words can never express my gratitude. Thank you for everything you did and continue to do. I know the authorities, be they local or central government, may feel that they have contributed the support during the aftermath. For me personally and my family, this is far from the truth. No one from government looked for us. No one helped us. We were left exposed and vulnerable. And when the authorities eventually did come, it felt like a tick box exercise. We were treated like numbers, not humans. This is something that we still feel today. In my experience, in the eyes of local and central government, our Grenfell and North Kensington community are second class, the people with needs and problems. I cannot help but feel that had our community lived in a different part of the borough, on the more affluent side, had we been from a different class, had we been less ethnic, the response in the aftermath would have been immediate. It would have been present. It would have been felt. We may be different. We may be diverse. But we are people. Think of the different professions in the tower, of the challenges that so many from the BAME communities had overcome prior to the fire in 2017. Think of the dignity demonstrated by those of us impacted over the last 5 years. We are human beings. We contribute. We pay tax. We provide leadership in our communities. In truth, our differences and diversity are a contribution to the borough and the country. Some people think about the aftermath as straight after the fire, but the aftermath continues today, 5 years later. The aftermath will last for years to come, and the impact will be generational. You cannot imagine what it is like having no one there to help you, to give you any glimpse or bit of information, anything, any strings to hold on to. When you don't know what's happened to your loved ones, it's torture. We experienced torture. The aftermath was torture. It was physically and mentally torturing. The Prime Minister promised that we'll be housed in 3 weeks. 4 of us, including my 16-year-old son and 88-year-old daughter, were moved into one hotel room, a room I remained in for 18 months. 4 individuals who were survivors and bereaved. Can you imagine the PTSD, the impact it had on us as a family? And that is just me. Imagine what it is like for all other families, bereaved, survivors. Imagine what it is like for my mum. She lost her son, her grandchildren, her daughter-in-law. No one checked on her. No one asked about her. And I want to say something about the children. They are the most forgotten. Even when those who had parents who had lived in the aftermath of the fire, the children experienced life as if they were orphans. We weren't and couldn't be there for our children. We couldn't even be there for us. My body has never experienced so much pain since the 14th of June, 2017. Physical, internal, and emotional pain. Life isn't easy anymore. Life is a challenge. Fear is constant. Nightmares never go. Inner peace is what we yearn for, even when we feel like it's going to be okay. It's just a matter of time that a memory, a thought, a feeling, an experience will interrupt that, and then we're back there again, like it's happening all over again. You may see us smiling at times, you may see children laughing, but that is just the part that avoids and masks. This tragedy has pierced wounds in each and every one of us, in ways that one cannot imagine. We may now and again put plasters to hide our wounds, but they are still there, and sometimes, many times, those plasters fall off. To this day, the support that we are given is only provided after jumping through hoops, whether it's fighting to get house repairs done or get the medical support we need. We are forever being asked to prove that we have been impacted, forever having to prove our pain. We are constantly having the impact assessed and measured to prove that we need mental or physical therapy, to prove we are still in pain. Is it not enough that we walked out of the building and had to watch my family, my brother and his family die? We still need support. Our children need support. Local and central government cannot be allowed to abandon us, to wash their hands of us when they think they have done enough. What happened to us was through their failings. Our loss, our pain, our wounds are because of them. This duty of care needs to extend beyond us, to the rest of the country, to the thousands of families who live in communities like us, like we had at Grenfell, who are still treated as second-class citizens. It needs to extend to the thousands impacted by the building safety crisis up and down the country. We are still impacted. We still hurt. We still remember. We haven't forgotten. All the issues we have, the PTSD, the mental and physical trauma that you see as problems in us. This isn't who we were. This is who some of us are now because of what the government did to us. Because of your absence, because you were not there, because you did not show that you cared. You have sapped all the energy from us. Those that caused this tragedy need to be held accountable. Their duty of care to us now has no limit. Thank you.
Ms. Wahabi, can I thank you very much for sharing those closing remarks. We're going to pause now to see if anyone else has any more questions for you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think you know, don't you, that we have a pause at this stage to see if anyone wants to suggest questions that ought to be put to you.
Yeah.
So we'll break now until 3:15 or just after,
Okay.
and then we'll see at that point whether there are questions.
Thank you very
All right?
much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Would you go to the usher?
Yeah, thank you.
Right, Mrs. Islam, we'll say 3:15. If you need any further time, which I think is unlikely, you can ask the usher to tell us that, all right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.